Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is what we call our group learning program, where each Sunday and Wednesday I get together with students, helping them understand the teachings of the Buddha that'll help you to be able to get to enlightenment. What enlightenment is it's a mental state that you can attain in this life where your mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind no longer experiences any discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind will have eliminated all of its anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others can be eliminated from the mind by training the mind. That's what the Buddha taught, is he taught you how to train your mind. So there isn't a bunch of beliefs in the teachings of the Buddha that are going to produce some pleasant afterlife if you believe in these teachings. That's not what the Buddha actually taught. He taught you how to learn, examine, and investigate his teachings, how to independently verify whether they're true or they're false, and then how to practice his teachings, implementing tools and techniques into your life that will help you to be able to uproot certain pollutions in your mind and be able to move the mind to this enlightened mental state that is a permanent mental state. And one of the things that the Buddha taught is meditation. So we start each one of our classes with meditation, and then afterwards I'm going to share a talk with you guys about the teachings of the Buddha. And today, we're going to be focused on this particular book, Volume 1, Chapter 22. This is the book that we use for this program. This is coming towards the end of this group learning program, and this particular chapter is titled Mental Health, a Modern Day Delusion. This is where you're going to learn about things like anorexia, bulimia, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, ADHD, ADD. And right now, there's a lot of people in the world that think that these are biological disorders or it's a brain defect or something like this. But what I'm going to show you through the teachings of the Buddha is how through training the mind, you can actually eliminate the symptoms that an individual experiences because of these. The mental anguish and the difficulties and struggles that someone experiences when they're experiencing those types of symptoms is actually true and real, but the reason and the cause of what's actually causing this is not really widely understood in the world. So in the teachings of the Buddha, you can understand what causes the mind to have these various symptoms that are associated with these types of things. So I'll share that with you guys in a way that you can independently verify and see for yourself what is the truth. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the way I start with meditation is I do some chanting in order to ease into the meditation. The chanting is on a laminated sheet over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to get a sheet if you like. I'm going to be chanting those on the way into the meditation, and oftentimes students will like to join in, so you're welcome to join into the chanting. You're welcome to get one if you like. Feel free to help yourself, because you're going to see the chants that I'm doing, and you're going to see the English translations as well. It's important to understand that during the lifetime of the Buddha, he didn't teach any rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. There's none of that type of stuff in his teachings. He didn't even teach prayer or anything like this. So if you've been in environments where people are doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship, and they're attributing that to the Buddha, his teachings don't include any of those things. He taught you to cultivate wisdom. Where chanting came about during the lifetime of the Buddha is that everything that he taught was oral, so they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, that every 2 weeks his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally as a way to commit them to their memory. So you can see from the origins of chanting, there isn't anything mystical or magical related to chanting. It's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony, or worship, or prayer, anything like that. Today, we use chanting as a way to ease our mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So you're welcome to chant along if you'd like. If you read the English translations on the chants, you're going to see a lot of gratitude and appreciation and respect for the Buddha. And because of this, I don't think that the Buddha actually even created these chants, because a Buddha wouldn't walk around teaching other people to chant to him out of appreciation, gratitude, and respect to him. This would be the ego if somebody did that. It would be like putting yourself above other people. And an individual who's gotten to enlightenment wouldn't actually be doing that. So these chants, I know, didn't come from the Buddha. They probably came from from his students, either during his life or after his death. Because if you learn from a teacher of how to move from the anger, the sadness, the frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you might have appreciation, gratitude, or respect for that person too. So I chant these as a way to help you ease into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing you guidance of how to be meditating while we're actually meditating together. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining us online, we can just all be meditating together at the same time. You'll be able to meditate along with all of us. And as we're meditating, then you'll hear the guidance that I'm giving you during that meditation. After the guidance and the meditation, there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. I'm sure you'll hear occasional sounds here or there in the environment. This is pretty normal. You're not going to be able to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. It's just not possible. So as long as your mind isn't craving permanent quietness, when you hear a dog barking or a bird chirping or a car going by or maybe someone sneezes or coughs, you won't be frustrated or annoyed. But if you crave permanent silence, you live in an impermanent world. You're not going to be able to experience permanent silence while you live in an impermanent world. So you can free your mind of having to experience any kind of frustration or agitation or annoyance by eliminating any craving for permanence. Then after our meditation, we'll be coming out of meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start today's class. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And as part of your journey to enlightenment, you would learn these different positions at different times because you could employ these at different times for different reasons. Oftentimes when people are first learning, they're learning in the seated position. So I'll give you guys some guidance on the seated position just to kind of help you a little bit in getting comfortable. Anything that I share with you is just something for you to consider because there isn't just one fixed way to actually sit in meditation. What's important is that you find what's comfortable for you. And if that's on the floor, in a chair, maybe you're at home, you're on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair or something like that, you can really sit however you're comfortable. But if you're on the floor, you might consider having some cushions under your rear because this will kind of soften your seat a bit. And then when people cross their legs, it's best if you just do that lightly. Whereas if you have your legs real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and it allows the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but there's more than one option here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can sit however you're comfortable. And in terms of sitting in a chair or on a bench or a wheelchair or a sofa, same thing. You can sit however you're comfortable. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me, I'm sitting in a chair with my legs crossed, so that might be an option for you as well. And then in terms of your upper body, you'd like your upper body to be erect with your sternum up and your shoulders back. This will help your mind to stay attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle so that your mind can be attentive and alert during the meditation. Because what meditation is it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. And you can do that in the seated, lying, standing, or walking positions. So you need your mind to be attentive and alert while you're actively training the mind. So as I mentioned, I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting, and then I'm going to come back in with some guidance to be able to help you. Sorry, 1 second. I just need to turn something on here. Okay. Arahang Samma Sambuddhassa ตังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังปุตโตภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone here at the temple. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. As I mentioned, today is our group learning program, and each Sunday I come together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment as taught by the Buddha, and helping students understand what it takes to move the mind to this enlightened mental state. As I was sharing, the enlightened mental state is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. This is a permanent mental state that you can attain during this life. By the time you get to this mental state, you will no longer experience any discontent feelings because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing them. So you can actually understand what's causing your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Oftentimes people think that it's being caused by something external. So they blame the feelings that they experience on their parents or their siblings or their friends or coworkers or their boss. But those feelings that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis aren't coming from external things. They're actually coming from within your own mind. And because of that, you can actually transform your mind and get to the point where you're only experiencing peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy. And this is happening through uprooting certain pollutions in the mind that the Buddha discovered. And not only will you eliminate all those discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others, but you'll notice that your mind's performing optimally. You'll have focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. Your personal and professional relationships will really be blossoming because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships any longer. You might notice that when you put out bitterness and hostility, it just comes back to you in your relationships. But you can transform that your mind's not doing that any longer. You can get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood, that now you might experience a bad mood from time to time. But that's because of what's going on within your own mind, and you can transform that and eliminate that. So I'm going to help you to understand some various aspects of the teachings of the Buddha today as it relates to mental health, because essentially that's what the Buddha was. He was the foremost person who had the most wisdom and understanding of the human mind than anybody that I've ever known, that he was able to boil down into common language understanding of the human psyche and the human psychology, and helping you to understand how to transform this, where today oftentimes we're misunderstanding what's going on within our own mind, or even a lack of understanding what the mind is. So this chapter that I'm going to be sharing with you guys, chapter 22, it's titled Mental Health, a Modern Day Delusion. This is where I help students to understand that what you might be currently believing about mental health is false. That if you think that what you're experiencing is because of brain chemistry, or some people think that they have a brain defect if they've been diagnosed with things like ADHD or ADD or bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or anorexia, bulimia, panic disorders, all these different things that you're hearing about in the world, there's a big misunderstanding about what's actually causing these. And because of the misunderstanding of what's causing them, the solution that's being offered isn't necessarily fixing the problem. If you understand what's actually causing these issues, and then you apply the actual solution from the teachings of the Buddha, you can actually transform the mind where you're no longer experiencing any of those symptoms associated with those kinds of things. So I'm going to walk you through this and help you to understand, and I'm going to pause at a couple times in order to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. You're welcome to ask any and all questions to seek clarification, because the student's going to need that ability to ask questions, because the things that I share with you are not going to be things that are common knowledge, the things that you necessarily know at this particular time. So as you have questions, you're more than welcome to ask those. If you're here at the temple and you would like to ask questions, we have microphones here in the white bowl. If you could just get a microphone, press the gray button, you're going to see lights come on, and you can hold that up to your chin. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then if you're online and you would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom in the comment section. I'll be able to see that and I'll answer your question. And if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream. So in order to understand this topic of mental health, you need to understand the very first and most beginning teachings of the Buddha. And in this group learning program, I've already shared them multiple times. And I know many of you guys weren't necessarily here when I was sharing those teachings. Like I mentioned, this is chapter 22. So students at this point in the group learning program have already learned a significant amount of things in order to get to this point that they're now learning about this particular topic. But what I have here is I have kind of a refresh for people to be able to understand the very beginning teachings of the Buddha. And I'm going to walk you through this in a way that I can refresh people's memory. And for those of you guys that haven't studied the beginning teachings of the Buddha before, this will be kind of a little bit of an exposure to those teachings. But typically I take a good 45 minutes or so and walk students through understanding his very basic, most beginning teachings as they're first getting started on the path to enlightenment. There's two teachings that you need to know at the very beginning. It's called the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths. These are things that the Buddha is teaching you about the world and about how your mind functions. The Buddha didn't teach a bunch of rules and commandments, and that if everybody followed these things, that the world would become a peaceful place. He didn't explain to you the way the world should be. He explained to you the way the world is, because the reason why the mind is experiencing the difficulties and struggles that it is because it's living in a world that it doesn't understand. There's certain natural laws that are at play and are affecting you at every single moment. And if you don't understand these natural laws and how the world is constructed, you will have struggles and difficulties in the world. So the Buddha didn't teach the way the world should be, and that if everybody followed certain rules and commandments, then the world would become a peaceful place. He's actually teaching you the way the world is. And by understanding the way the world is, you can navigate this world more peacefully. It's just like when we grew up, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity. and we didn't understand the world we lived in. So we struggled. We fell down. We hurt ourselves. We bumped our elbows. We broke our toys, and we cried and cried and cried because we didn't understand the world that we lived in. We lacked wisdom of this natural law. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of that natural law. We started making different decisions, and then we started experiencing different results. Now we've learned to tie our shoes really tight. We watch the surface of the sidewalk as we're walking. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around like a kid all the time. And now we experience different results. We don't fall down. We don't break our toys. We don't break our arms and stuff like this because we understand the world that we live in. So these teachings that I'm going to share with you guys here, just as a way to expose you to them, is helping you to understand the way the world is. And it's important that you don't believe what I'm sharing with you, because the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. They're based in you being able to cultivate wisdom and understand the world around you. And the only way you can do that is if you learn, examine, and investigate something intellectually, then you reflect on that to independently verify whether it's true or false, and then you practice it and integrating it into your life, and that's where you'll cultivate wisdom to be able to know the truth about these teachings that the Buddha shares. So this first one here is called the universal truth of impermanence. This is where the Buddha helps you to understand that things around you are constantly changing, and that you're not living in a world that has fixed objects, that things are going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away. This is called a conditioned object. And you can independently verify this in your own life, that you can look around the world and see that everything around you is constantly changing. This physical body that you have is constantly changing. It's not fixed. You can see that the relationships that you're in, they're constantly changing. You have people coming in and out of your life all throughout your life. You can see that the weather is constantly changing. It's not fixed. You can see your bank account is constantly changing, right? It's going up and down and up and down. Some people's goes up and up. Some people's goes down, down, down. All these things are change. And this is a very important understanding about the world, because as you see what we're going to talk about in the Four Noble Truths, this is a building block to help you understand that. Then the Buddha helps you to understand your mind, that the mind in the unenlightened state is going to experience discontentedness. This is where the mind is unstable, unsteady, it's shaken up. It's experiencing what's called a conditioned feeling. That based on some condition, your mind's going to experience either pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. The pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. The painful feelings are like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. And then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category. But shyness is a good example, where it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Or if you were on public transportation and somebody that you don't know came and sat really close to you and your body was touching their body, you might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. So these are the three feelings that the unenlightened mind is going to experience: pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant. And this is where the mind is shaken up. It's unsteady, it's uncalm. And the mind is forming its inner feelings based on some condition. So for example, if you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside and you get really happy and excited, that's a pleasant feeling. Based on the condition that it's sunny outside, your mind is now happy and excited. But then the problem with that is the sun is not permanent. So if you base your inner feelings on the sun, when the sun changes, your feelings going to change. You're not going to be happy anymore. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because the mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. If you get really excited and happy when your bank account balance is up here, that's not permanent. So that means your happiness is not permanent. So when your bank account balance goes here, you're sad or frustrated, right? This is how you can see that it's not other people that are causing you to be frustrated or angry or irritated, because there's not even any person involved. If it goes from sunny to raining and you're frustrated or irritated, you can see it's your own mind that's causing that. There's not another person involved. Or if your bank account fluctuates and you get irritated or annoyed, you can see that it's your own mind that's causing this. And I'm going to explain to you why when we get to the Four Noble Truths. So you can independently verify that this mind in the unenlightened state is experiencing these things, because you can look at your own mind and you can see that any feeling that you've experienced in your whole life fits into one of these three categories. So this is how you independently verify this. And normally, as I mentioned, I walk students through this in a very slow, methodical way so that you can understand it. But if you have questions when we get to that, let me know, because I'm going through this in a little bit expedited way just so that we can get to the main topic today and just helping people to refresh their memory. This universal truth of non-self, which is the third universal truth, is helping you to understand a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. There's 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered. They're referred to as the 10 fetters. The word fetter comes from during his time frame in ancient times, that if you were a prisoner and they were trying to keep you confined to a certain area, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. What a fetter is there's a shackle, a chain, and a ball. And what they would do is they would attach this to your ankle and they would have you in a field, and now the criminals would just stay in this open field. Where today we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells, where during his lifetime they would just attach a fetter to your ankle and they would keep you confined to this certain area. So when the Buddha discovers these 10 individual pollutions in the mind, he refers to them as fetters, because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state where you keep experiencing frustration and agitation and annoyance and all these other feelings over and over and over and over again. And when you purify the mind, you get rid of these fetters, your mind is free. It's liberated. You're able to experience peace and joy permanently. So the universal truth of non-self is the solution to one of the fetters. This one fetter that this is the solution to is called personal existence view. This is where the mind is clinging to the body or the mind itself. It's holding on and wanting things to be a certain way. Your mind might cling to this self-image or the self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. So if you've ever been at a social event and you spilled something on your clothing and you felt embarrassed in that situation, this is your personal existence view. The mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. And as long as you're being perceived that way, you'll be completely fine. But when you're not being perceived that way in terms of your self-image, you will have frustration or agitation or annoyance, or you'll be embarrassed. Or if you've ever walked in front of a mirror and you saw a wrinkle or a mole or a pimple or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair and you were shaken up by that, that is your personal existence view, where the mind is clinging to this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And now when you're not being perceived that way, the mind is shaken up. If you've ever stood in front of your closet thinking, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? And you picked certain clothing based on who you are going to see. This is your mind wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. If you were like me when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I used to get out the gel and the mousse and I used to run it through my hair, and I would try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I go outside to the school bus. And sometimes I did this so long that I would miss the school bus because I couldn't go outside until every little hair was in exactly the right spot. This is personal existence view. The mind clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, clinging to the self-image. But then there's also the self-identity in the mind. You might be clinging to things around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, or your job or occupation. You might be clinging to, I am Chinese, or I am American, or I am Lithuanian, or I am a Brit, or I am an Aussie, or I am Mexican. Any of this I am around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. It can be anything. It can be, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife. And your mind might be clinging to this identity. And now, if things are happening the way you want, you feel happy. But if they're not, then you'll feel angry or frustrated or some other uncomfortable feeling. So think back to a time when you were with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and maybe when you guys were together, you felt fine. You felt like, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. But then when you guys broke up, you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because your mind didn't identify with I am single. It felt like I wanted to get right back into another relationship in order to be able to reassume that identity. Or say you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, they're talking very fondly about the nationality of where you're from. Maybe they say all Americans are lovely and kind and friendly and warm and gentle, or all Chinese people are so friendly and nice. Oh, they're just so great. And now you're like, they're talking about me, right? This is the identity that the mind is holding on to. But now the problem with that is because of impermanence, 2 tables over, somebody's talking in a negative and degrading and disparaging way about where you come from, or the identity that you're holding on to in your mind. And now you're frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Or say you've adopted an identity about your job or occupation. Say I identify with, I am a police officer. And now as long as I'm doing that job, I feel great. But maybe 10 years into my career, I get injured, or I get fired, or somehow I'm not able to do this job anymore. Maybe I retire. Right? And now I really struggle because maybe now I'm driving a taxi and the mind doesn't identify that way. It identifies as I am a police officer. And now it really struggles during this period of time because the mind really wants to be doing that work as a police officer because that's the way the mind identifies, but yet it's doing this work as a taxi driver, or this person is retired. And now they struggle during that period of time. So these are just some examples to help you understand the problem in the mind is where the mind is confused and having misunderstanding, that it doesn't realize that this body is not you. It doesn't define who you are as a person. And any identity that you're clinging to in the mind, that doesn't define who you are either. But the challenge is that the mind is going to keep clinging to this and holding on to it, trying to identify who you are as a person through these kinds of things. And as long as you do that, you're going to keep experiencing discontentedness related to this. So what the Buddha teaches you as part of the universal truth of non-self is that there is no self. This body is not you, and any kind of identity that you're clinging to in your mind, that's not you either. There is a body, there is a mind, and it has come together for this existence, and that's referred to as a person, or you might call that a human being. But that doesn't define who you are. Your choices and decisions and the things that you experience in life, that doesn't define who you are. So for example, if I was using drugs and alcohol in the past, and now today I think I am an alcoholic, or I am an addict. No, I am not an alcoholic. The choices and decisions that I made in the past were to use drugs and alcohol, but I don't have to identify as that's who I am today because of that. I can just understand that those are choices and decisions that I made, but that doesn't define who I am as a person. So the Buddha teaches you how to free your mind of holding on to this identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And now that's going to cause conflict within your own mind. So these are what's called the 3 universal truths. And you can independently verify all of these. And I usually walk students through how to actually do that and how to accomplish that, including the universal truth of non-self. So if you guys have questions on any of these, you're welcome to let me know. But then I'm going to introduce you to this, and I'm going to open up to questions here in a moment. There's this other building block that you need to know in order to understand the Four Noble Truths. And this is going to be important as we talk today about mental health, that there's something in your mind called craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations, grasping, clinging, and holding. This is the mind longing, yearning for something external in order to provide you pleasant feelings. The mind is longing, yearning. It's pulling towards the objects of its affection. It's almost like the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So if you've ever been in the mall and you saw like a brand new pair of shoes or a video game or a piece of jewelry or some clothing or something, and you were like, oh, I just got to have that. Oh, I can't wait to get that. Oh, those shoes are going to look so good on my feet. I can't wait to go to work on Monday morning. Everyone's going to see those shoes. Oh, it's going to look awesome. That's the longing, yearning, the craving, right? This is the mind wanting something external. So it's almost like the mind has this unquenchable thirst of seeking satisfaction externally, where the mind's like, oh, I know what I want. I want more money. That's what'll fix everything in my life. Let me get some more money. Oh, let me get a boyfriend or girlfriend. That'll fix everything. Let me get one of those. Oh, I know what I need. A bigger house. That's what'll do it. Oh, let me get a car. That'll fix everything. Let me just get this new car. That'll make everything better. So the mind longs and yearns, thinking that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. This is a craving, a desire, a longing, a yearning, a want, or an expectation. So this is a building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths that I'm going to explain to you. Now, let me just pause here and see if you guys have any questions on this little overview that I've done of the three universal truths and this craving, desire, attachment. Do you guys have any questions here? Anybody online have questions? Yes, ma'am. If you could get a microphone right here. And you can keep these microphones with you because someone around you might have a question, or you might have more than one question. But yeah, if you just turn on the gray button, you'll see the lights come on. It'll just take a second or two for it to engage.
Hi. Oh, it works now. Mm-hmm. About the three basic truths thing, I think for the first one and the third one is something that we need to understand and then accept. But for the second one, I just want to ask, I think it's something we need to change. Is that right? Because if we want to be truly happy, we should not let our feelings always conditioned.
Right. What you're doing in order to get to enlightenment is you're eliminating the mind forming conditioned feelings. As long as the mind's forming conditioned feelings, they're going to be temporary and you'll never get to permanent happiness. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be experiencing unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy, where there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for you to experience that happiness or that joy. In the unenlightened state, there's conditioned feelings. It's kind of like, if my mom and dad does this, if my boss does this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if the weather is this, if my bank account is this, then I'll be happy, right? That's conditional happiness. And that means the more conditions you have, the less and less amount of happiness that you can have. Your happiness shrinks because there has to be more and more conditions that are met in order for the mind to be happy. So what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're training your mind to no longer form its inner feelings based on some condition. That if mom does this, I can be happy. If mom does that, I can still be happy. I'm not going to form my happiness based on what mom's doing, right? But that's what the mind does in the unenlightened state, is it forms its feelings based on some external thing. And all these external things are impermanent. So as soon as you allow your mind to form its inner feelings based on something external, then your happiness is not permanent because that thing is going to change. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you will have eliminated all these conditioned feelings. But sometimes people are like, hold on a second. Am I eliminating happiness? Like, what are you talking about here? You're not eliminating the happiness. What you're eliminating is the conditional happiness, where your mind can only be happy if certain conditions are met. What you're working towards, and what the Buddha guides you in how to do, is get to unconditioned happiness, unconditioned joy. And that's what, yes, you need to transform this. You need to be able to transform your mind. And that's what the Buddha's path is, to be able to teach you how to transform your mind away from forming these conditioned feelings, where you can transform your mind and train your mind to no longer form its inner feelings based on something external. Mm-hmm.
I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am. If you could also turn off your mic when you're not using it, that way we won't get feedback through the speakers.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the society has like a conditioned mechanism of, for example, if we say about meritocracy, or it's like the society is forming in a way that is already conditioned. And if everyone, like right now in the society, need to survive or like play with the rule of the game of the society, then you have to be constrained to some conditioned thing. Like you have to, for example, perform good in the work so that you can get promoted, so that you can get like more money to, for example, afford travel or like seeing more of the world. So I feel like the world is already conditioned, and maybe we impose these conditions on ourselves. And of course, like I can try to remove that condition to achieve the permanent happiness, but then that's also a little bit contradictory to how the society is formed or how they define the rules. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to express.
I'm understanding some of it, and I understand this is the way you think now, but this is your current thinking without having understood what the Buddha has to share with you, that there's nothing about society that is going to change your ability to get to enlightenment. It's not about changing the outside world. That's not how you're going to get to peace and joy. This is what oftentimes people think, is that they need to change the outside world in order to get to peace and joy. But you can get to enlightenment based on how things are right now in the world. There's nothing about the way that the world is structured that is going to hinder you from getting to enlightenment. But what an individual's mind is having is a lack of wisdom of the world and how the natural laws function, and therefore they will experience difficulties and struggles in being able to experience that peace and joy. So once we get into the Four Noble Truths, you understand more about why the mind is experiencing these discontent feelings. Right now, I'm just giving you some information that's going to help you to understand what is causing these problems in the mind to have these feelings over and over and over again. So I'm going to put it together for you here in a moment. Mm-hmm. Did I see someone else have a question? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. I can't quite hear you. If you press the button, the lights will come on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe it's a very basic question. I just don't understand why those feelings are neither painful or non-pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, what neither painful nor pleasant are things like shyness. Like if somebody's shy, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. It's like the mind is dissatisfied or uncomfortable in that situation. The example that I gave is like, say you're on a public transportation and somebody you don't know comes and sits next to you, and if your body was touching their body, you might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant. The mind is neither painful nor pleasant, it's uncomfortable. The mind is kind of shaken up in that situation. So it's like a lighter feeling compared to something like a pleasant feeling or a painful feeling.
Oh yeah, thank you. Because I always feel shy, so that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Yeah, that shyness is coming from your personal existence view, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And now the mind's afraid to kind of talk or be out in the public because the mind's wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And this is a common thing. I used to have a lot of shyness as I was growing up at different times. But when you get rid of that personal existence view and you realize non-self, when you train your mind to let go of wanting others to perceive you in a certain way, then you'll get rid of that shyness. But I'll explain to you more here in a moment.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't see any questions online with anybody. So I'm going to move into now sharing with you the Four Noble Truths, because I've given you some building blocks to understand a little bit about this in an introductory way. The Four Noble Truths are four simple statements that are going to explain to you the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. In these four simple statements, you can have a breakthrough to be able to understand why your mind experiences those discontent feelings. And by understanding what's causing them, you can actually eliminate them. But if you don't understand what's causing it, you won't be able to eliminate it. So in the First Noble Truth, the Buddha is explaining the problem. The problem is that your mind experiences discontentedness, that your mind is forming conditioned feelings. Based on some condition, your mind's going to experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. The mind's going up and down, up and down. This is a problem that an individual will experience on a day-to-day basis. The cause of that problem is the Second Noble Truth, that discontentedness is caused by craving, desire, attachment. The mind is longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. It's craving permanence, wanting things to be a certain way permanently, expecting things to be a certain way permanently. And when the mind gets what it wants, it experiences pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, things like that. But then when the mind's not getting what it wants, then the mind experiences the painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, and others. So you can think about different examples from your life. If you think about like that boyfriend or girlfriend that you came together with when you guys first got together, you might have been so happy or so excited that you have this new person in your life. They're showing you affection. They're inviting you out to dinner or to the movies. Maybe you're going to the park and you're having great conversations. Maybe you're even having intimate contact. And it was so pleasurable for you at the very beginning. But then over time, you had expectations of them. You wanted certain things from them, and they wanted certain things from you. And you couldn't fulfill their expectations, and they couldn't fulfill your expectations. And you were getting angry and frustrated and irritated, and you guys broke up, and you guys finished the relationship. And now you might have felt lonely or bored, or you might have been missing this person. Or you might have been angry that they left and that you guys' relationship was over. This is because the mind's craving permanence. It's wanting this relationship to be permanent. Sometimes people think it's love or your care that's causing you to feel those painful feelings. That's not what's causing it. What's causing it is the mind's craving permanence, wanting this relationship to be permanent, when in reality, this relationship was always impermanent. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, one of you would have died first, most likely. And then when that person died, you would have felt lonely or bored or missing this person or angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. So if grandma or grandpa has died and you grieved and had sorrow, or if your mom or dad or your brothers and sisters have passed away and you feel grief and sorrow, you're not a bad person because of experiencing this. It's just that the mind is untrained. It has craving, desire, attachment. The mind is craving for grandma and grandpa to be permanent, when in reality, they are impermanent. That because they were born, they had to die. But the mind is craving this permanence and wanting them to be in the world permanently. You can see this at weddings. If you ever go to a wedding and people are grieving at the wedding and they're crying at the wedding, well, here's brother or sister going off into the world with somebody else. It's like, hold on a second. That's my brother. That's my sister. Or that's my child. That's my son. That's my daughter. How dare you take this person away from me, right? The mind is craving this permanence, wanting this person to be in your life permanently. Or if you could think back to when you got dropped off at university or college, or maybe when you got dropped off at school for the first time when you were maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, 6 years old, you might have been crying or your parents might have been crying. This is the mind craving permanence. Here's a 6-year-old child going off into the world by itself, and it thought mom and dad were permanent, and it's holding on to mom and dad, and now it's crying and it's grieving. Or you think back to a toy that you might have had that broke, and then when that toy broke, you might have been grieving or sad. Or think back to when we were children and we were like, Mommy, Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? Can I have chocolate and ice cream? And they're like, sure, here you go. Here's your chocolate and ice cream. And because we had a craving, we were so happy because we got what we wanted. You're the best mommy and daddy ever, giving me chocolate and ice cream. Oh, this is wonderful. But then at some point we were like, Mommy, Daddy, can we have chocolate and ice cream? And they said, no, you can't have chocolate and ice cream. You're the worst mommy and daddy ever, right? This is because the mind didn't get its craving fulfilled. That painful feeling that arose, that anger that arose, it wasn't coming from mom and dad. It was coming from your own mind, where you were craving permanence. And now, because the mind doesn't understand the second noble truth, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, you will tend to push people away out of your life. You might have been pushing friends or family away, or you might have pushed a situation out of your life. This is called aversion, because the mind thinks the problem is external, and that if it pushes this person away, it will solve the problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem, because if that was the real cause of the problem, when you push this person away, you'd be peaceful and joyful for the rest of your life. But that's not the case. When you push that person away, you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. So it's not this person that's causing you to be angry. So when you push them away, you haven't actually solved your problem. You just ended a relationship and pushed this person away. Or the second thing you'll do if you don't understand the second noble truth is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, because you're not getting what you want. And you feel like maybe if I'm bitter and harsh and hostile to this person, it like fears them into doing things your way. It's kind of like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear that animal to do things your way. So if you're doing that, like, do things my way, now the mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled. And in this situation, some of those people probably chose to leave out of your life because they're not interested in being around bitterness and harshness and hostility. Or the third thing you might have done is you might have put your expectations on someone, trying to control them or force them to do things your way. Because the mind in the unenlightened state, it has ego, it has arrogance. It thinks that your way is the right way and everybody else's way is the wrong way. And now if people do it my way, I will be happy. But if they don't do it my way, I'm going to be angry or frustrated. This is the mind craving permanence, not understanding that you live in an impermanent world. Not everybody's going to do things your way. So if you can only get along with people who do things your way, you're only ever going to be able to get along with one person, because there's only one person in the world that does things your way all the time. Do you know who that person is? Who's the person that does things your way all the time? Yourself, right? That's it. You're the only one. Everyone else is going to do things differently in some situations. So if you can only be peaceful and joyful with people who do things your way, it's only a matter of time before this new friend does something different than the way you do it. And now you're going to be angry or frustrated at them, right? So the Buddha is teaching you in the second noble truth that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And you need to be able to independently verify this and see it for yourself. Don't believe me, right? Look at a recent time when you've been angry, you've been frustrated or irritated or annoyed. It might have been this morning. It might have been yesterday. It might have been last week. Look at that situation. Look at it with these fresh eyes. What was it that your mind wanted? And if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, you got angry or frustrated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. You should be able to see this for yourself, that there was something your mind was longing, yearning for. You were craving something. You were wanting or expecting something. And if you can't see it, let me know, because I will help you. I've had students over the years ask me different questions and they couldn't see how their mind was causing their discontentedness, and I will help you to be able to see it. Okay, so you need to be able to see the second noble truth, that it's craving, it's desire. That's what's producing all these feelings that an individual is experiencing, that longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. And then the Buddha teaches you to eliminate discontentedness. You need to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. If you understand that the cause of discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment, well, if you eliminate the cause of it, you'll eliminate the effect. This is why you can get to enlightenment. You don't need to go out into the world and train everyone else to do things your way, because that's impossible. There's 8 billion people in this world. You're not going to be able to train 8 billion people to do things your way. But if you can train your mind to eliminate the longing, the yearning, the craving for permanence, now you can get to a point where you can be peaceful and you can be joyful, right? So if you eliminate the cause, you'll eliminate the effect. So the Buddha didn't go out into the world and train everybody to do things his way. He just trained his own mind, and that's how he was able to get to the peace and the joy. And the way to train your mind is called the Eightfold Path. This is the fourth noble truth. This is the complete, perfect plan of how to train your mind and transform it to experience the peace and the joy, this enlightened mental state. And the Eightfold Path is 8 individual steps, 8 individual factors. And it starts with right view. What right view is having the right view of what's causing your discontent feelings. Wrong view would be to blame other people. If you continue to go around the world blaming other people for the feelings that you experience, you'll continue to experience those over and over and over again, because it's not other people that are causing these feelings. And as long as you're blaming mom and dad and brothers and sisters and wanting them to change, you'll never actually get to peace and joy. But when you can establish right view, where you understand it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, now you can actually apply the solution and actually fix it and get to the point where you're only experiencing peace and joy, and your mind is in that permanent mental state. And there's 8 individual factors. organized into 3 sections: wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. I'm going to be teaching this tomorrow morning. If you're interested in learning this, tomorrow morning, starting at 9 a.m., I'm going to be walking you through this in a very slow and methodical way. And it's going to take me about 2.5 hours to teach it. I'm actually going to be starting with right view, and I'm going to be walking through helping students to first understand right view and then all the other factors. Okay, so this is the core central teaching of the Buddha. Do you guys have any questions on this before we talk about mental health? Because this Four Noble Truths, it's really important to have an understanding of this to be able to understand why the ADHD, ADD, bipolar, and all these other things is not being caused by brain chemistry. It's actually being caused by what's going on in your mind. And this is where the solution can be understood. So do you guys have any questions on the Four Noble Truths? No? Okay. All right. So now let's talk about modern mental health, because there's some big misunderstandings in the world around mental health. And by understanding the mind, you can understand what's causing these difficulties and struggles. If you've been diagnosed with any of these particular mental illnesses, the anguish and struggles and difficulties that an individual experiences is real. It's 100% real, but the cause of what's causing it and what people are talking about is not necessarily the truth. And by understanding the truth and applying the solution, you can actually get to a real result. Whereas if you don't understand what the problem is, you're going to keep going around and around and around, not being able to actually solve the problem. So the first thing to understand is that the brain is not the mind. And the mind is not the brain. So the brain is the physical organ that's in the body. It's physical, it's tangible. But the mind is non-physical. It's not tangible. You can't point to it. You can't touch it because it's non-physical. So these are 2 different things. There's a connection between them. They affect each other, but they're not exactly the same thing. They're 2 different things. People experience these symptoms of sadness, stress, anxiety, and others, like we were just talking about, like pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant feelings. And typically, they're seeking chemicals to change brain chemistry. The mind is experiencing feelings, but they're tweaking brain chemistry to try to fix what's going on in their mind. And because of this, the chemicals are not a permanent solution. It's not the brain chemistry isn't what's causing the mind to experience discontentedness. So if you're tweaking brain chemistry, you can't actually fix the mind through tweaking brain chemistry because it's 2 different things. So when the mind is polluted, when the mind has difficulties and struggles with things like craving, desire, attachment, it will affect the brain chemistry. And when you tweak brain chemistry, it will affect the mind. But you can't clean up the mind of craving, desire, attachment through tweaking brain chemistry. There needs to be training of the mind. So this discontentedness is not caused by brain chemistry. So discontentedness can't be eliminated through changing the brain chemistry. The mind needs to be trained to let go of its craving, desire, attachment. It needs to be trained not to hold on to things. If you think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you guys broke up, when you guys first broke up, you were probably angry or sad or bored or lonely or missing this person. But at some point, your mind was, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go. And when you let go, that's where your peacefulness came in. Or you were like, you know what? If she wants to move to another part of the world, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your mind regained its peacefulness. And there's no amount of brain chemistry that you can tweak in order to train your mind to let go. As long as your mind is holding on and craving permanence, it doesn't matter what brain chemistry you're changing, that your mind is still going to be holding on. So that individual who you guys were in a relationship with and you broke up, you can't tweak brain chemistry to eliminate your sadness. That sadness that you had or that frustration, in order to get rid of that, you have to train your mind to let go. And there's no amount of brain chemistry that you can tweak in order to allow that to occur. So these feelings are eliminated through training of the mind. And that's what an individual can learn how to do through the teachings of the Buddha. Let me give you some examples of symptoms of what people are referring to as mental illness, and then I'll help you to kind of see in a rudimentary way how the teachings of the Buddha will help you to transform this. So sometimes people experience childhood trauma, what they call childhood trauma. Like some kind of incident has occurred in someone's childhood. Maybe they were physically abused, maybe they were sexually abused or something like this. And now in the present moment, as an adult, they might feel sad, or someone might say that they're depressed, or they're having PTSD, or things like this, post-traumatic stress disorder, or things like this. What this is that there was some experience that happened in the past that the mind is now holding on to. It's clinging to this experience, and it's forming feelings today based on something that happened in the past. This past experience is not permanent, but the mind is clinging to it and holding on to it, and now it's forming feelings based on something that happened in the past. But you can train your mind to let that go. You can train your mind to let go of that experience, where you'll remember that it occurred, but you don't form your feelings today based on something that happened in the past. You need to train your mind to let go. And that's what's going to allow you to overcome this, where you don't experience the sadness or painful feelings related to some event that happened in the past. Whether it was in your childhood or your adulthood or any other time, trauma is not permanent. You can train your mind to let go and not hold on to that and form feelings today based on things that happened in the past. Or say someone's been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. What this is where an individual gets excited and happy and elated, but then they get sad and frustrated, and their mind kind of bounces up and down. What this is the mind is longing, yearning. It's craving excitement. It's craving these pleasant feelings. So oftentimes people who are diagnosed with bipolar disorder, they're oftentimes involved in, very risky activities like lots of sexual partners or gambling or drugs and alcohol or things like this. They will kind of crave and crave and crave, and they get up to this excited state. But then at some point, their mind's going to crash and end up in this sadness. This is because of the craving, desire, attachment. It's experiencing pleasant feelings and painful feelings based on this longing, yearning, that the mind chases sex or gambling or shopping or some other pleasant thing. It'll chase and chase and chase that. But eventually, all of that gets exhausted, and now the mind crashes, that now it can't have sex, or it can't get drugs and alcohol, or it can't go shopping, and now the mind ends up in the sadness. This is the craving, desire, attachment. So the mind, in the unenlightened state, and when people lack wisdom, it's conditioned to believe that these problems are chemical, that there's somehow like a brain defect. Sometimes people talk about that there's somehow a brain defect, and that the problem is that the chemistry in the brain is off, and that now we need to regulate the brain chemistry in order to change the feelings that are in the mind. This is part of wrong view, where the mind just doesn't understand true reality of what's causing these feelings and why these feelings are coming about. But you can get to a point where you understand what's causing these discontent feelings is the craving, desire, attachment. That there's a certain lack of wisdom in the mind, that it just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. As long as the mind goes around believing that the problem is a brain chemistry and that there's a defect in the brain, then it's not actually implementing the training that it needs to be able to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. So oftentimes when people get on medication in order to tweak their brain chemistry, it never actually solves the problem. They keep experiencing difficulties and struggles over and over and over again, because they're not actually addressing the real root cause or the real root problem, which is the untrained mind that has craving, desire, attachment. And sometimes when someone's diagnosed with a mental illness, there's certain behaviors or moral conduct that are unwise or that are risky. And oftentimes people blame this on their chemicals in their brain. So if somebody has intentions, speech, or actions that are harmful to others, someone might just resign themselves to thinking that that is appropriate because their brain is defective, and now they can't treat other people kind and warm and gentle because they have a defect in their brain. This is part of wrong view. But if you come to understand right view, that with the cultivation of wisdom, you can train the mind to eliminate cravings, desires, attachments, and you can improve your moral conduct through cultivation application of wisdom and training your mind. And now when you interact with people in a loving and kind and warm and gentle way, that's what will come back to you. But as long as somebody believes that the problem is brain chemistry, they'll actually never solve the actual problem. They'll just be relegated to medications for the rest of their life. And that's a choice for someone to make, but they're never going to experience the improvement. But when you get rid of that type of thinking and you see what the real problem is, which is the untrained mind, now you can implement real solutions and you can get to a real result. So if the problem is a brain defect, we would observe that all populations of people across the world would have the same defective brain, that the same problems across all populations would occur. But this isn't what we actually see. We don't see all populations in the world having the same mental health crisis. Humanity and the human mind couldn't have truly become unbalanced and defective in a matter of a few decades, because it's only been in the last several decades, maybe the last 100 years or so, that people have started associating feelings like sadness and frustration and anger as a brain defect. Because prior to that, human beings were still experiencing sadness, anger, and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, but they didn't consider it to be a medical problem. That during the lifetime of the Buddha, they experienced anger and sadness and frustration and irritation and stress and anxiety. They experienced that during their time too, but the chemicals didn't exist during that time frame. So they used training of the mind to figure out a way to actually solve this and actually remedy the problems in their mind. So if the human brain is actually defective in an individual who's experiencing sadness, anger, or frustration, that would have took multiple generations to occur. But this is all occurring in a very short period of time that people are thinking that their brain is somehow defective. If modern mental health practices are helping, we would see the number of cases and the number of people with mental illnesses declining. So if modern mental health has discovered a problem, that there's a defective brain, and now we found the solution, which is introduce chemicals into the brain and tweak brain chemistry. Well, when we start doing that, then we should start seeing the cases of mental health issues declining, because we found the problem and we found the solution. And now we should see this declining. But this isn't what we actually see. We see a proliferation, an explosion of mental health disorders that are being diagnosed and people being put on medications for that. If modern mental health practices are helping in solving a real problem, where we see these mental health practices the most, these places would have the most mentally stable and mentally fit people in the world. So, for example, places like the USA and UK and Australia, places like this that are practicing modern mental health the most, that are introducing medications and chemicals into the population to be able to solve these mental health issues. If this was actually solving a real problem, and this was actually the way to help human beings get to more stability in their mind, those places would have the most mentally stable people in the world, because they found the problem and they found the solution. And now when we introduce the solution, this population of people would become very mentally stable. So you need to ask yourself, is that what we see? Do we see that those are the places where people are the most mentally fit and the most mentally stable? Western cultures don't understand and practice things like the three universal truths, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and all these other teachings that need to be able to train the mind. Here in Thailand, we don't see a proliferation of chemical-based mental health treatments. They have it here, but it's only used in very rare situations, kind of acute situations, because people grow up in places like Thailand learning and practicing and training their mind. They understand that the brain and the mind are two different things, and they're working on training their mind. So you don't see this proliferation of things like ADHD and ADD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and all these other things that people are being diagnosed with, anorexia, bulimia, and things like this, PTSD, all these things. They, of course, understand what those things are, but you don't see this proliferation of diagnosis and chemical-based treatment here, because people are actually training their mind through the teachings of the Buddha, so they're not actually experiencing these types of symptoms that are being experienced in the Western world. But because the Western world doesn't understand the brain and the mind are two different things, and they don't understand the teachings of the Buddha, then they're not actually training their mind. So they're not growing up with this training. So there's things like understanding that you can learn and practice these teachings to create a well-trained mind and a stable mind. If you start to understand this and you start to implement this, you can actually see that it actually works. You can gradually eliminate medications, enjoying a completely stable mind where it's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. Of course, if somebody is on medications now and they're interested in doing this, it will be wise for them to get up and running on the teachings of the Buddha for an extended period of time, create some stability in the mind, and then with the support of their doctors and their family, be able to gradually reduce their medications. There's been plenty of people who have been studying with me who have actually been able to accomplish this, where they can see that their mind is completely stable and completely steady, more stable and more steady than it's been in any other time in their life. And then they gradually decrease their medications. And now they don't have to continue to take medications for the rest of their life. Because an individual can eliminate this lifetime of being relegated to medications, therapies, and the expense associated with those. It's very expensive to be relegated to medications, therapies for the rest of your life. You can free yourself from this lifetime of expense and the side effects that are produced because of introducing chemicals into the body. So the mind can function free of medications if it's trained and it's well trained. An individual who's currently taking medications and decides to train their mind, they will know for themselves when or if it's the right time to eliminate their medications. A teacher can't tell them that. An individual has to be able to see for themselves that their mind is more stable and they have that confidence, so that then on their own, they can choose for themselves if they should eliminate medications and so forth. So there's these different mental illnesses that are talked about in the Western world. I've got a chart here in chapter 22. There's this chart and there's another one as well, where if you understand something called ADHD or ADD, what this is where the mind's lacking concentration and it's lacking the ability to focus. All this is the mind is lacking concentration, that the mind has craving for mental stimulation. And this has been a proliferation in the last few decades. This didn't exist when I was growing up as a child because we didn't have the overactivity and the overstimulation that we have in our society today. Today, there's a lot of video games. There's lots of social interaction on social media and real quick videos where people are getting this quick stimulation. And now when you're doing that all throughout your day, where you're stimulating your mind with all these different apps and games and things like this, and you're used to these really short, quick bursts of stimulation. Well, now when you go to school and you're sitting there for an hour in front of a teacher, you might have difficulties concentrating because your mind hasn't been trained to concentrate because it's been craving and longing, yearning, and overstimulated for such a long time. So it's not that the brain is defective. It's just that growing up as a child, this individual never trained their mind to be focused and concentrated because they were jumping from app to app to app, from short video to short video to short video to all this different stimulation. So by training the mind to have concentration through meditation and things like this, an individual won't experience the symptoms that are referred to as ADHD or ADD. That lack of concentration won't be there because the mind will be well trained. Or if somebody has been diagnosed with something like anorexia or bulimia, these are eating disorders. What this is coming from is the mind has a craving for this self-image of the body to look a certain way. It's craving this permanence. Whereas if you're used to looking at celebrities and magazines and these photoshopped images of people looking a certain way, now your mind has that imprint that you think that your body should look that way too. Not understanding impermanence, that everybody's going to look different because we are all impermanent. But if your mind has that imprint that I have to look like that person in the magazine, then now someone might choose to have eating disorder where they're actually choosing to eat because they're trying to form their body to be a certain way. So they're choosing not to eat or to vomit or things like this because they're trying to get that perfect image that in their mind has been conditioned to think that this picture in the magazine is the way I should look too. Where in reality, if you understand impermanence, that all of us look different and that's normal, and I don't have to look like the one in the magazine, and that's okay. So an individual can gain some wisdom to eliminate this craving for this image of beauty and identifying with that image in the magazine as being how I'm supposed to look. And we could go through more and more of these. There's plenty of them here. There's some over here as well. This is an entire table that's in as part of the chapter. Even something like suicidal thoughts. We can talk about this one, right? Like somebody in the present moment in their modern day life can be experiencing painful feelings where they're really experiencing a lot of sadness and frustration and painful feelings in their mind. And now they feel like they want to kill themselves. Well, when I've talked to people that have been interested in committing suicide, and at one time I had those same thoughts too. I had the thoughts of killing myself. I didn't really want to die. And the people that I talk to, they don't really want to die. They just want to get rid of these painful feelings that they're having in their mind. And these painful feelings are so intrusive within one's own mind that they think the only way out of this is to kill myself. Because they don't know the solution. They don't know the problem, which is craving, desire, attachment, and they don't understand the solution of how to fix it. They think the problem is the world and the outside world, and they think the way to solve this is just kill myself and get out of this world, and that's going to solve the problem. But that doesn't actually solve the problem, because once you kill yourself, there's rebirth, and you're reborn over and over and over again. You're going to keep coming back into the world over and over and over again to experience this world continuous times. So killing yourself doesn't actually solve the problem. Those painful feelings that someone's experiencing, they can actually eliminate them through training of the mind. But an individual needs the wisdom of how to do that. So if there's a craving for permanent peacefulness, but you're experiencing the painful feelings, and the mind doesn't have the wisdom of how to get to the permanent peacefulness, now an individual might struggle and choose to kill themselves, or they might have suicidal thoughts. And this can all be eradicated and eliminated out of the mind, where you can be quite peaceful and quite joyful in your day-to-day life. So this is just a sampling of all the different mental challenges that are being diagnosed and people are being labeled with, and people are thinking that it's their brain that is defective, when in reality it's just an untrained mind, that the mind hasn't been trained. It doesn't have the wisdom to understand that we're not born with the wisdom of how to train our mind. If you grow up in a society like here in Thailand, you grow up learning these kinds of things. But if you haven't been born here, if you haven't grown up in a family that understands these teachings, then you'll really struggle in life because your mind isn't understanding the world around you. And by training your mind, you can resolve all of these difficulties and struggles. But an individual needs to decide for themselves if that is what it is that they're interested in doing. Not everybody's going to choose to do that. But here in Thailand, they grow up this way. They grow up learning how to train their mind, and that's part of the wisdom that we learn. Just like we grew up learning how to clean our body, and we know that that's important, and we clean our body every day, there's another part of this being. It's your mind. And if you haven't learned how to clean your mind, then you're not addressing this entire being. So your parents might have taught you how to clean the body, but they didn't teach you how to clean your mind. And if you aren't cleaning both of these two things, then you're not addressing this entire being, and you probably feel uncomfortable. Just like if you don't take a shower for several days, this body feels uncomfortable. If you're not cleaning up your mind, you're going to feel uncomfortable. And that's what an individual is experiencing, is that if you've grown up not understanding how to clean your mind, you're going to feel very uncomfortable in your day-to-day life. So the Buddhist teachings are helping you to be able to learn how to clean the mind, because you've figured out how to clean the body. People taught you how to do that, but you also need to learn how to clean the mind. And if you're addressing that, then you're addressing this entire being, and now this entire being can get to the peace and the joy. So this is everything that I have to share with you guys on this particular topic. Is there any questions that you guys would like to ask related to this? Yes, sir. If you could get a microphone. For anybody who's online, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Yes, sir.
I like to talk about bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
Now in my lifetime, I've met about 2 people that's had that, and I wasn't even aware of it. And there was professional people. One was a solicitor, the other was into computers, IT. Anyway, their problem started. They'd been, obviously means they had bipolar for quite some time, and they've come off the medication. From what I know, most of them don't like the medication, but it does calm them down. Mm-hmm. But after 6 months, they come off the medication in both cases, And after about 6 months, that's when I realised something was wrong, and I found out they had bipolar because they absolutely went nutty. And the thing is, they wasn't craving for sex or anything like that, because one was in a happy relationship. It's only his wife that told me he's been on medication. He's okay when he takes the medication. But my point is, he come off the medication for more than 6 months in both cases, and it just come back. So it's not just about coming off the medication. I do agree that meditation would help him a lot more than the medication, because the medication's got so many of the side effects that is harmful to him. But I mean, it's not just about coming off the medication. They need help. And, you know, you might get it in Thailand. In the West, in America, started doing it. I think a guy called, realised this, he was into meditation, De Silva, I forget his first name. And he started helping a lot of people with mental health. And they started using it in their hospitals. But I'm afraid you don't get that in England. They want to just get you in an hospital, jam a needle up your backside, and let you go after a few days. You know what I mean? So, you know, I do believe meditation helps, but I don't believe that coming off it helps as well, because they need some sort of treatment, because 6 months later, they're just going to go fruity again.
Do you have a question for me?
Yes, I mean, the question is, what other, apart from meditation, what other, what alternative medication, what did you do in Thailand?
Okay, so the reason why that individual who's on medication, when they come off of medication, they're having difficulties and struggles, is because they haven't trained their mind. You know, that's what I'm explaining here, that it's not just getting off the medication. There needs to be a training of the mind. The medication is going to tweak brain chemistry, and it's going to numb the mind, and it's going to have the mind function to a certain level of degree, but it's never going to be quite stable, even with the medication on board. It's never 100% stable. The individual's still experiencing anger and frustration and agitation and all these other feelings. It's just that the mind is muted or numb to a certain degree with the medication. So the medication isn't a solution. It's actually just kind of putting a little Band-Aid on it. So what I'm explaining is that once an individual is training their mind with the Eightfold Path and all the teachings that the Buddha shares, which includes meditation, but there's other things as well, then once that mind becomes more stable, that individual who's taking medication, they'll be able to see that their mind is more stable, and they'll be able to decrease their medication and ultimately eliminate it. And at that point, they will have the stability of the mind because they've actually trained their mind. In the situations that you're talking about, that individual hasn't trained their mind. That's why when they come off the medication, they're still having difficulties. They're still having problems. So the training of the mind through the Eightfold Path to understand the wisdom, the moral conduct, and the mental discipline, how to actually train the mind, that's what an individual needs to learn. You learned the Eightfold Path with me, a week or so ago. That's the core central teaching that an individual would need to learn. And if they've done that, when they reduce their medication, they'll see that their mind is stable and steady. But if someone hasn't done that, when they get off the medication, they're going to have all kinds of difficulties because their mind is right back where it started from with the lack of training and all those pollutions that are in the mind. The cravings here that I talk about, this isn't that everybody who's been diagnosed with bipolar will have sexual cravings. That's not what I'm teaching, right? Because that would be permanence. What I'm saying here is that with an individual who has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, there's typically an extensive amount of craving in the mind. It can be sexual craving, but it can be other things too, like shopping or gambling or money or things like this. And an individual will push themselves and push themselves and push themselves in order to fulfill those cravings. And as long as their cravings are getting fulfilled, they'll feel excited, but at some point they're going to crash because their mind is no longer getting their cravings fulfilled. So the cravings aren't getting fulfilled, so the excitement is gone, and now they're going to end up in the sadness or the frustration or some other discontent feeling. Does it help you? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
It's like the daily practice in the normal life to practice to train the mind is like acceptance, impermanence, or like let go, like how to train it?
So this is the training, and I'm going to teach it to you tomorrow. If people end up coming tomorrow, I'm going to have classes tomorrow and have classes all this week. The course is called Harmony in Relationships. Everything I do here is available at no cost. The books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, classes, courses, retreats. There's an extensive amount of training here that an individual needs to know. It's not a 5-minute answer that I can give you that tells you what the training is, because it's extensive. It's not a 1 week thing to get to enlightenment. It's not a 1 month thing. It's not even a 1 year thing. It's going to take gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is people think that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and then he instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. You can see it in his own words, and you can see it within your own mind that it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So it's this Eightfold Path that is going to be the full, complete training that someone needs to know inside and out, backwards and forwards. And that's why in all the various courses and retreats that I share, I make sure that I teach this thoroughly. So I'm going to walk through this over a 2.5 hour period tomorrow, where I'm going to help students to understand this Eightfold Path in its entirety, so you can integrate it into your life and experience the real results. And that's where you're going to experience the real transformation of your mind, but through integrating these techniques and these tools into your day-to-day life to train your mind. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Someone behind you has a question. Yeah, you in the blue. Yeah, you in the blue shirt. Yeah.
My question is not by this part. I still have a question about the unconditioned happiness you said before. Because for most of the people, the common people, of course, are happy or feeling or conditioned to a very high extent. So I wonder whether it's truly helpful to be unconditioned happy, to be that status. Have you ever really know someone can be that status, and if it there, what kind of living status people, that kind of people usually can be? I'm just curious and think about.
Is your question like, what is it like to have unconditional happiness?
Yeah, whether it's truly helpful, whether it's truly possible.
Yeah,
I'm thinking. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
An individual who's gotten to enlightenment, they're not going to tell you that they've gotten to enlightenment. One of the best ways to know someone's not enlightened is they're going to tell you that they're enlightened, right? So if someone walks up to you like, hey, by the way, guess what? Don't tell anybody, I'm enlightened, right? It's like, oh, wow, okay, look at you, Mr. Special, Mrs. Special. Like, this is the ego, this is the arrogance, this is, what do you want from me? Do you want admiration? What do you want? So the mind isn't actually enlightened at that point. So someone who's enlightened and experiencing what I'm describing to you, they're not going to tell you that they're enlightened. But for anybody who is experiencing this, they know that their mind is enlightened, and they would be able to explain it to you very clearly of how to attain that enlightened mental state. But they're not going to tell you that they are enlightened. But if you're interested in knowing what it's like to have unconditioned happiness and unconditioned joy, I can explain that to you, that the mind is bright, it's radiant, it's uplifted, it's glad. There's always pleasantness in the mind. It's cheerful. You're always able to easily smile and be friendly and cheerful with the people around you. You can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful with everybody around you, no matter what's happening. Because in the unenlightened state, you can't be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody, because the mind has certain cravings. You want people to be a certain way. And if people meet those criteria, you'll be happy and you'll be polite and respectful to them. But if they're not doing what you want them to do, you might be irritable or frustrated or disrespectful to them. This is because of the mind wanting everybody to be the same way. This is the craving for permanence. That in the unenlightened state, you'll have people that you like and you'll have people that you dislike. But that dislike is coming from the mind's expectations that it wants everybody to be a certain way. And when they don't meet your criteria, you might dislike them. So by the time you get to unconditional joy, not only do you have unconditional joy and unconditional happiness, but you also have unconditional love for everybody around you, that you can love everybody, that you have unconditional love, meaning there's no condition that you have to meet in order for me to love you. In other words, what love is a genuine interest in seeing a being be well. that you have this active goodwill towards others. And if you have expectations in your mind and you want other people to be a certain way, then you can't love everybody. Because if somebody's meeting your expectations, you might say that you love them. But if people don't do things your way, then you might say, I don't love you. That's not actual love. That's, if we would call it, conditional love, even though there's no such thing. It's, if you meet my conditions, I will say I love you. But if you don't do what I want, I don't love you anymore. And in this situation, you can't love everybody because not everyone's going to do things your way. So by the time you train your mind to get to unconditional happiness, you also have unconditional love, that you can love everybody unconditionally, understanding that people are going to be different than you, they're going to function differently than you, and that's okay. But with the mind's ego, it'll think that my way is the right way and everybody else's way is the wrong way. And now you can only love people if they do things your way, or you can only like people if they do things your way. But you can get to a point where you just have love for everybody, which is a genuine interest in seeing everyone be well. And then you can be joyful and happy and cheerful and bright and radiant and uplifted. Your mind can be glad in all situations. Where sometimes people say, well, if your mom died, would you be glad? Well, you're not glad because your mom died. You're glad despite that your mom died. You're cheerful despite your mom died. Even when your mom died, you understand that of course mom died. She's impermanent. And just because she died doesn't mean I have to be upset. I can love mom. I can have gratitude and appreciation for mom, but I don't have to be sad and upset just because she died. So having unconditional joy and unconditional happiness is the best thing that'll ever happen for you, is getting to this enlightened mental state, because now all your relationships will be completely harmonious. You won't be having difficulties and struggles in your day-to-day life because you can navigate the world through these natural laws that the Buddha teaches you, and you'll be able to walk through the world with joy and peacefulness and a smile on your face at all times.
But I'm thinking for the most people, their daily life is, how to say that, the desire, provide motivation to the daily life. There is most people's living way, right? If they can live in an unconditioned happiness status, what is their life would be? So they lost all their common motivation for their past lifestyle.
So in the unenlightened state, you're motivated by your cravings, desires, attachments, because you want those pleasant feelings. And that's what you're used to, is chasing after pleasant feelings. I want to get my happiness. I want to get my excitement. So I'm going to chase these cravings in order to get that. If you're not doing that, then in the unenlightened state, you're all the way over on the other side, where you're feeling dull and lethargic and sluggish and disinterested in the world. And either side of this, you're not peaceful. You're not joyful. An individual who's brought their mind to the middle, because that's what the Buddha is teaching you, is to come to the middle. You can have motivation, you can have enthusiasm, you can have ambition through wise decision making. In my opinion, the Buddha was one of the most ambitious people I ever known. His ambition was to share his teachings throughout the entire world so that the entire world could understand his teachings to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. That takes a lot of enthusiasm, ambition, and motivation to be able to do that. But he didn't do it with craving, desire, attachment. The way that your mind currently thinks and the way you're currently motivated is that you're motivated to get those pleasant feelings. But the problem with that is sometimes you'll get what you want and you'll feel pleasant feelings, and other times you're not going to get what you want. And you're going to feel angry and sad and frustrated. But someone who's brought their mind to the middle and who's pursuing their goals and objectives through wise decision making, they can have enthusiasm and ambition, but they're not going to base their inner feelings on whether they get what they're working towards or not. Because a true goal is a goal that you can work towards, and whether you accomplish it or not, you can maintain your peace and joy and your happiness. But what people are thinking is a goal is this craving, desire, attachment, that if you're chasing after something and you get it, you'll feel happy. And if you don't get it, you'll feel sad. That's not a goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment masquerading as a goal. So right now, the way that your mind currently thinks and the way you process the world around you, if you're going to get to this enlightened mental state, you're going to need to change your perspective. And that comes through training of your mind, through understanding the teachings, so that you can learn how to come to the middle way and have ambition and enthusiasm and motivation based in wise decision making, rather than chasing these pleasant feelings. Because chasing after pleasant feelings with craving, desire, attachment is like a drug. It's like a drug addict chasing after a substance. And there is a better way of life, and that's what the Buddha taught. But you don't understand that better way of life right now. So it's hard for you to be able to see it, because all you've ever done is chase after these pleasant feelings through craving, desire, attachment. But what I'm sharing with you is there's a better way of life. And right now you don't understand that 100%, but there's an ability for you to be able to understand it if that's what you would like to do. And it's going to change. It's going to need to have a change of perspective within your own mind. And that's going to come through cultivation of wisdom.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am. You just need to press the button. There's a gray button on there. Yeah.
Hello. I just want to ask how do you clear my mind, because I'm a really serious ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And just like there are thousands of thoughts come inside my mind, and I just can't control it. So
yeah, you came in after we were already talking, but you would need to learn this Eightfold Path. This is what I'm going to teach tomorrow morning. So if you'd like to come tomorrow morning, I'll teach you how to train your mind. You can start with meditation. That's a good thing to start with. That's what we started our class with. But you're going to need to know this whole path in order to get rid of all those intrusive thoughts. Right now, you've been labeled with ADHD, but your mind just isn't trained. That's it. If you train your mind, you're not going to have these same challenges and struggles that you experience right now within your own mind. But you're going to need to learn this entire path, which I'll teach tomorrow morning starting at 9 o'clock. So if you would like to come learn how to transform your mind, that would be a great time for you to be here. But I'll start at 9 o'clock. So you'll need to be here at 9, because that's when we do our meditation. And then afterwards, I'm going to teach this.
okay, thank you. So it's like a long training, right?
Yeah, it's going to take some time. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. There's no quick answer, quick fix. That's what the mind typically wants in the world, is it's looking for that quick fix. Just give me a pill. Just give me like a 5-minute video that I can figure this out. But that's not the way it works. Think about how long it took for you to learn how to wash this body, right? When we were children, our parents were washing this body for us when we were like 1 day old, 2 days old. It wasn't until we were like 12 or 13 that we figured out how to wash this body and do it for ourselves. It took us 12 years, essentially, 10 to 14 years to be able to figure out how to wash this body, right? It's not going to take you that long to figure out how to clean your mind and train your mind, but it's going to take you some time. There's no quick fix. But the thing is that it's a permanent fix, that once you train your mind in this way, your mind will never again experience the struggles and difficulties that it did when it was unenlightened.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for coming to visit. If you would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for you to do that. Tomorrow I'm going to be starting a course from Monday through Friday. It's from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's titled Harmony in Relationships. This is where I'm going to teach you how to develop harmony within all your relationships. So you're welcome to come to any part of that you like. And then I teach regular classes on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can attend here at the temple, but all these classes, courses, and retreats are live streamed as well. So no matter where you are in the world, you can come in through Zoom, through Facebook, through YouTube. And if you can't attend live, they're recorded so you can watch that way as well. So thank you all for coming, and whatever you choose to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Take care. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.